Oh, I'm on. Hey,
You are on and live.
man. Hello. Fixing the attitude. Because it is not about me. It is not about me right now. Hello.
Okay. There's an echo from somebody.
Probably me.
Okay. Perfect. Hello, ladies, and welcome all to the Pink Couch. We are so excited to be here today, and I'm so happy to see the two of you. It took us a little bit to get here today, but we're here. I'm liking the zhuzh of what you're doing right now, ladies. I like it. So how are you? What are you bringing to the couch today?
Well,
Let me start with you, Ken.
let's see. What am I bringing to the couch today? Honey, I'm full of sass and razzmatazz today. Only because I had to big myself up for what we're getting ready to dive into. And I really needed to just give myself some breathing exercises and some relaxation. Did a little prayer, both by myself and then with my Gigi. And then I'm just excited. I'm excited to change lives. I'm excited for people to have a conversation that they don't typically have. And this is one that is of extreme importance to me. So I can't wait. I can't wait to dive in.
I love it. Rob, what about you? Oh, you're back on mute.
Can you hear me?
Oh, we can hear you.
What am I bringing? A lot. This was, someone asked me, actually one of our guests was asking, well, what should I wear on the pink couch? And I meant to wear my Thug Life t-shirt, but I couldn't find it because it has really been that kind of week. I'm working on getting fired on purpose. But no, more importantly, we had yet another one of these mass shootings in what's real close to home. I spent my years, I was living in Colorado when Columbine happened. The movie theater, I had moved to California, but the movie theater incident that happened, that's the theater that my kids and I would go to in Boulder. That's my home. That's my alma mater. That I have people there, and I'm tired. And it's one of these things where I remember when Columbine happened, I was depressed for a while. I remember when the movie theater happened, I was depressed for a shorter while. And when this happened, I just want to make sure nobody that I know or 1 degree of somebody that I know is okay. And I just was like, that is a sad testimony in terms of that journey. So I'm in some need of this conversation just from a mental health perspective. And am looking forward. I've been looking forward to having this conversation for a few months, but timely for right now, what's going on.
Thank you, ma'am. And I think for me, I think I need you to mute, Rob. Yeah, I think for me, it's been a roller coaster. I'm on a roller coaster, super high highs, super low lows. Celebrated hubby's birthday this past weekend, which was fabulous. And on that same day, found out that my auntie, who I love dearly, passed away. And so it has been that, then the news of what's happening in Boulder came around, this amplified, hatred towards the Asian Pacific Islander community is just running rampant. And then, got news that family member is pregnant and, starting this next chapter of their lives. So super high highs and then just these places. And, by the way, I am officially vaccinated. Second shot in the arm. And that's a big one for me. So I am, where I am today, that saying? Oh, look at it. See, she's vaccinated part 1 today. Today I am living in the, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And so I'm ready. And I'm ready for the conversation that we're going to have today and for the amazing people who are coming to join us today and are sharing their hearts with us. So, with that, Ken, why don't you talk about what we're actually talking about today?
You know, every time we say that we're staying ready so we don't have to get ready, sometimes we think that we're ready for something, right? And then it happens and you're like, oh, Lord, I don't know if I'm ready or not.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that whether you are ready for this conversation or not, that you don't leave it, that you get totally into the hearing of what we're going to talk about here, and that you completely lean in, dig your heels, and stay for a while. So we titled this episode, and we have a 2-part series tonight and tomorrow night, and we titled it Semicolon. And semicolon is, as you know, a punctuation mark, but it indicates a pause. It's typically between the main clause and, some type of list. And so for a suicide survivor, a semicolon is what represents the pause in their life of the old and the continuation of a life that would not have been if they would have succeeded in taking their life by suicide. And so you might see this as a tattoo on some people. The first time I noticed it, I was sitting next to a young lady who was part of a walk that I was doing. So I'm an ambassador for AFSP, which is the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And I raise money for this foundation. I do walks all the time at college campuses. We do sleep-ins, just spread awareness and talk about the importance of suicide prevention. And we also work with legislators to craft policy that will impact lives and save lives. And so I was sitting next to this young lady, and she had the tattoo on her wrist, and it led to an entire conversation about her attempt and her experience, and also the perspectives that were shared with her from her family members who were caught off guard by her attempt to take her life. And so I think today we are going to spend a little bit of time uncovering some of those same experiences and walking through what makes a person get to a place where they feel like that is their only way out. So that is what we're here to discuss today. Like I said, it's going to be heavy, but I hope that you will stay, dig in, be part of the conversation, and at the end of the day, get over being uncomfortable talking about suicide. Get over being uncomfortable talking about mental health. It is imperative that we start having these conversations. And I know that's easier said than done, but I think we can do it. So why don't we try?
Thanks, Ken. Whew. So, take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. And let's go on in. So,
Can you
Rob,
hear me? Can you hear me? Is it sounding horrible, or are we good? Okay, awesome. It's really hard for me to be on mute. So we have kicking off our night one of this 2-part, very important conversation. Thought we'd get really grounded in the how should we be thinking about mental health? If we have a hard time talking about mental health, talking about suicide is that much more challenging. So how do we begin to have that conversation? What are some of the signs we need to look for, and just get grounded about what's happening from a suicide pandemic in our country? So coming to the stage, or coming to the couch, we have Dr. Ashley Reynolds. Now, look at the doctor. Hey, doctor. So you might have seen Dr. Ashley on the pink couch before. He joined us in a previous episode when we were talking about myths and getting our facts straight, one around the flu vaccine that two of us have taken. And so, Ashley has done pretty much everything from an ER nurse in the military, has done, PhD in health behavior. He is now the Chief Experience Officer at BioIQ. And he is, most importantly, he is in this fight to better the experience, better the care for all people, all animals, all planets, all plants. I've been to his house. He has chickens and he can tell that story. So in any event, he is my good partner in trouble. He will be yours. He's coming to the couch with a prescription pad ready to have this conversation. So I think you are just what the doctor ordered, Ashley. Let's bring you on to the couch. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. You hear you?
You sound like I'm used to your voice being much louder. There you go. Okay, so why do we need to have a better understanding about suicide?
I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what suicide is, what it means to people. When you talk about suicide, there are so many dimensions, religious implications through people's fear and guilt. It is one of those things that people are fearful to talk about. But if we talked about more, I think we would have a much better opportunity to identify issues early and to get people the help that they need. It's have you ever heard of the term super taster? It's a concept of people who are genetically predisposed to being able to taste bitter things and just taste foods more strongly than anyone else. I think of people who have mental illness as super feelers. They just feel everything stronger than we all do. They react to it or don't have the same sort of skill sets that we do to react to it. And so many times their only option for them logically in their mind is something that relieves their pain. It's not about being selfish. And I've heard that so many times, and I hate it when people talk about it being a selfish act, because it is an act of self-healing. They're trying to end their pain. And that's not being selfish at all. If you were to identify with what these people are going through, and recognize that pain is real, then you would know that it is not a selfish act.
Yeah, I think the one thing that we fail to realize in the society that we live in right now is that we don't give people the grace or permission to not be okay. Right. Everyone has to live this facade of everything's fine. And, I was talking to somebody earlier today and she was like, how are you? And I said, girl, I'm exhausted. And she kind of took a step back because she's so used to people saying, I'm great. How are you? Right. And I think we just live in this bubble of it's not okay to not be okay. And I think we have to change that. And I'm wondering, why do we have that? Why do we live with that kind of mindset?
I think a lot of it is through our upbringing. A lot of people are taught at a very young age to hide our feelings for all different types of things, like my feelings for guys or your feelings for something else, or something that really we are taught to hold those all in because we're, believe it or not, a fairly prudent and reserved people as it comes to, and so we are conditioned that we have to stay here and not create any waves and not be sort of like loud and whatever. And so we teach our children, little boys, do not cry, little girls, it's just one of those things where we condition our children from a very young age to suck it up. That suck it up culture is horrible. And I think it's become exacerbated during the pandemic because during this period of time, that suck it up culture has gotten a lot worse. And for people who are not equipped to deal with that, and couple that with isolation, which is the principal ingredient for making somebody go down that road, you put those two things together and it's just a recipe for a problem.
One of the things I was thinking about, particularly what happened in Boulder, is we tend to use words like, oh, this sicko and this, this mental health, he has mental health. And I also think that puts some sort of negative connotation. Now, let's just be clear. I do not condone going anywhere and shooting any human ever in life. But it is this kind of sensitivity. I don't know what the right word is, but yes, they are sick. And it's interesting because I find that when people have cancer, we don't say, oh, you sicko, right? But when there's a mental health issue, that what early reports is that's what this individual was suffering through, we tend to go there. And I think that further just makes the cause of trying to make mental health like any other illness. We have illnesses all in our body, and sometimes they're in different parts of our body. And it doesn't excuse it, but that's been in my I was thinking about that since this happened, and it happens every single time.
I've seen it in healthcare. I've worked in the emergency room, and when somebody comes in crisis, doctors and nurses immediately brand that person. They label them with the crazy, whatever. And that is so pervasive, even in healthcare. So we're taught, early on that women attempt suicide more frequently than men, but men are more successful at it because men tend to use more lethal methods of a suicide. And what bothers me about that, it's true, but what it does is it sort of negates the pain and the experience of the person who's attempting suicide, because that attempt isn't something to be disregarded because, oh, you're just a woman, or, oh, your pain isn't all that real. And so in the healthcare system, that sort of translates into something that I don't think is very good. And so we have to really fight against that every day and recognize when somebody presents and says, I'm not okay, we have to step back and accept that, recognize it, and get them the help that they need.
Dr. Ash, in the midst of all of this, especially, pandemic living, right? We talked a lot about nobody was really okay. You ask any, there was never any day where you're like, how are you doing today? I'm fantastic in the midst of a pandemic, right? But the rates and the instances of depression and suicide have amplified as a result of the pandemic. And then we're inundated. We're talking about the news, we're talking about everything that you're seeing, and you're inundated with all of this media, and the majority of it is negative. How does that continue to impact individuals, especially as they're combating loneliness, et cetera, that was amplified during the pandemic?
I think highly feeling people are going to feel that even more. And when you put somebody in a situation, think about some of the reasons why people become depressed in the first place. Substance abuse, like alcoholism, and you couple that with isolation. Or if you have a really bad relationship and now you're trapped in that house with that person, you can't go anywhere, and there's no way out for you. Maybe that person is your husband and he's abusive, right? Or there's an abusive relationship going on, and you can't go anywhere, and you can't drink anymore, and you can't take enough drugs to make it go away. There really becomes, in their mind, only one way to go. And all of that just sort of weighs you down further and further until you start to withdraw. And that is really, just made, this whole thing has just made it so much worse.
Yeah, part of the thing that I think people don't understand is This is not an issue that impacts one race, one age group. This is an issue that is pervasive. And I live in the state of California, which I was born and raised here, love my state. Some of us have, other states we like and sit in right now. There's one of us on this couch that's in DC. Oh, in the A. Okay. So if we just think about, I'm very involved in California legislature and moving mental health access into high schools, junior high schools, college campuses, because suicide is the second leading cause of death for people ages 10 to 34. I'm going to say that again. Second leading cause of death, ages 10 to 34. What are we doing if we don't figure out how to get to the root of the problem, right? So we have to stop trying to treat the outcome. We have to stop looking at the suicide as, well, we got to start there. We need to go upstream. We need to figure out what is causing that. Why are people experiencing hopelessness and depression without getting help, despair, without sharing that information and that with other people? And when they do try to share it, why aren't we making sure that people understand how to have those conversations and to help them in those critical moments that can save their life? We have to do something, and we have to do it now.
This is a principal failing of the healthcare system. If you look at things like healthcare coverage, how much coverage do you really get for mental health issues, right? We don't help people when they need it. And I think that if you look at other ways of delivering healthcare within a country or a society, they figured out better ways of addressing this. But in our sort of employer-sponsored world, and even in the state-sponsored things like Medicare and Medicaid, the opportunity to receive mental health treatment is so narrow. And I think that's a huge miss on our part as a country, as a society. We don't make it easy for people to get help. Not only talk to others when we're isolating or feeling down, but how do you pay for it? It's expensive. And for many people, they don't have access to a therapist or a counselor or rehab or some of these other things. So the only way they can access those things is if they get into trouble or if they try and fail. But God forbid they should be successful the first time, right? So I feel like we've missed a huge opportunity to take care of our own because we have not given this sort of importance that it deserves.
I don't think you could have said it better, or any of us could have said it better. So thank you. Thank you for setting the stage for this conversation for us. This is a really, as we're going on and we're about to start getting really deep into some personal experiences, would really love, Dr. Ashley, if you wouldn't mind hanging around in the back, because we do want to make sure that we are providing support, to the folks who are sharing with us today. So I'd really appreciate that. Thank you so much. So our next guest this evening is an incredible, incredible, incredible young man. And he's an author, a student, the person who, if you're a parent, is the child that you have always dreamed of. If you're an individual, this is the person who you strive to be. And I don't care what age you are coming into it. Let me introduce you all to C. Victor Herbin IV. And welcome, 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 Victor. It is so great to have you here. You're an author, you're an advocate, and you have lived a lot in your years and have had some experiences. And we are so happy to have you on the couch with us today. So first, let me just start by saying thank you. Thank you for deciding to spend this time with us today.
Sure.
So let's just jump right in. The topic of suicide is really personal to you. And so can you share with us your story, what your connection is to suicide, and why this has been such an important issue for you to take on?
So I personally have experienced like those thoughts and like that kind of mindset. But a story that I wrote my book on actually was of my friend Barry. He had we were texting and we were having a conversation, and he said something. He was like, I'm gonna kill myself, or like something along the lines of that. And then I was like, LOL, like laughing out loud, because I was like, it didn't really connect. It wasn't really like connecting that he was actually saying that. I thought it was just a joke, because like that's what it was, so normalized. And so the next day, like he wasn't like texting back or anything over weeks. And so like we had like found out that he killed himself. And so then we went to his funeral, and it was like there were a couple of people from the school there, but a lot of people were like posting about it. And a lot of people, they were like, oh, like Barry, rest in peace, rest in peace. And like I respect it, like you could say like rest in peace, but if like people be like, yeah, like he was so close to me, and they would like claim that kind of to get like sometimes to get like the attention on them. And it's kind of cruddy, because a lot of people, it sucks, because it's like, especially after you're dead, there's nothing really you could do about that. And it's just kind of like annoying, because like why would you do that? What type of person? So it is a lot though. But
How old were you when this happened, and how old was he?
it was probably, I think it was my sophomore year, the beginning of my sophomore year. So I was 15.
Wow.
How long ago was that?
I'm 17 now.
Yeah. It's okay for us to ask your age. It's not okay the other way around. Yeah.
So as you just thinking about, you lost someone, and you're talking about all these other people and the pull of other people, and sort of claiming onto, like, sensationalizing this, like this is they wanted to get street cred for being connected with this person, right? But you were suffering in a different way. And we talk about survivors, and this is a different lens on survivors. These are the people who were left behind. You were left behind. You survived, you're a survivor and left to kind of hold and pick up the bag and make sense of things once this person is gone. And it's really hard to know what to say to someone who's in your situation when when this happened, in particular for you. It's really hard to know what to say or what to do, and people stumble and they fumble. How have you been able to cope?
When it first started, I didn't really have a good coping mechanism. I tried to go to therapists and stuff, and like sometimes like it would show in my like schoolwork that I was like going through some things. And so like I was just trying to get back on my feet, and like I would try therapists, and I did sports, but over time I stopped trying to like ignore it, and then I started to face it. So I started writing music, and it's kind of like that was really it for me. That's really soothing, and it's because I'm expressing my emotions, and I'm like putting it into like a tune, and like a whole different, its own special thing. And so it gives like my pain like beauty. So that way it's kind of like, okay, yeah, you went through it, but you're still here now to like. So it kind of helps. Definitely writing music for me.
You even had a smile on your face as you talked about the music that you're writing. So it's definitely the right way to channel that energy.
Yeah, thank you. It's definitely it's more fun. Like the thing I don't even understand why. It's just like when you have something that you've created and you hold it close to you, kind of like, and a lot of people will desensitize it. It'll be like it's not really nothing, but it really matters. If it matters to you in your heart, I feel like it doesn't really matter what anybody else doesn't really matter what anybody else thinks. But
So when you think was someplace that you went to, right, and that was in writing and music and those sort of things, what would have been helpful for you, from other people? What could have helped you at the time, and even now? Or there what could have helped, but even, if it's not come to you in that way, what are things that people did or said that were really not helpful?
It's kind of like not the phrase of "I'm there for you," but just like that's like everyone's go to like off the gate. Like it would be like I mean that's all people would say as if it was your birthday and they were just saying happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday. Just like I'm there for you, I'm there for you, I'm there for you, I'm there for you. So it's like people are so like, oh, like someone died. Okay, let's do it. I'm there for you. But they're not really like they're just saying that because like for the day. But some people like it's very a small amount of people who are actually after that's all over, like will check on you. Like that day is not the hardest. It's just that next week, and then the month after that, and the 6 months after that, where you gotta go through life and realize that they don't get to experience that anymore. So it's kind of like it's just you really can tell who's really there for you.
You talked about normalizing. Your book talks about normalizing suicide. What does that mean particularly in your age group? What does that mean in terms of normalizing suicide?
They make it seem so unimportant. Like it'll be in a lunchroom, people will be like talking, and then they're like, "Oh, like I'm killing myself, ha ha ha!" Like there'll be a big conversation, and then someone will say, "I'm killing myself," and then everyone will just like laugh or like just oh ha ha or like just start talking about something else, and so it's like people are laughing, but then when you sit down and think about like the fact that you don't know, like for someone to out of all the things that you could say is like you would say that. So it's really not a lot of people start to think about that. Like, wait a minute, like they could have been that could have been real. So like we're so like desensitized to it, and it's so normalized in like our society and how young we are. I guess that people don't take it seriously, and
So how do I mean? I just think back. I mean, when I was 15, about 10 years ago, that I could not imagine having that kind of conversation as if it was past the past the salt, past the. I just can't imagine that. And I think about just with I didn't have access. Okay, it was longer than 10 years ago, but I didn't back when I was your age. There wasn't social media. There wasn't instant information access to information. There wasn't. I mean, bullying existed, but it wasn't at the magnitude of what you all have to deal with on a regular basis. But I cannot imagine just your generation that's growing up in this time where it is past the salt, as Kennedy was mentioning earlier, that this is the second leading cause of death right in your age group. I mean, so I imagine your friend Barry, was he the first time you had experienced someone suicide? Have you known of others?
yeah, that was my first. That was the first time like I had ever been like introduced really into my life. Like and then it didn't help because like after that I started to go through my own stuff, and then it was like so it was really high school. I don't know why it just seems like high schoolers really like there's a lot of struggle mentally with our age group, and it sucks because it's like people tend to think that there's no need to have worries at this time. So it's kind of like, well, yeah, like I have my worries, but my worries aren't any less valid than your worries are. So it's kind of like, I don't know. I guess I don't even know. You're gone.
Well, you talked about something that you talked about grief and how you had to start, that it's not a day later, it's not a month later, so are you still grieving? And how long is that? Or, have you transitioned away from that grief period?
It definitely ranges with everyone because everyone has different coping mechanisms. But like, I don't still, it, as I started to grow out of it, like when it was that 1 week, it was really hard. That day after, I didn't even sleep. But it's like that month when you're like, okay, I'm trying to accept this, trying to really take this in, but I know I got to move on because I can't be stuck in this hole right now. And so then, like, as it goes on, so it really just depends on how much you want it to be gone and how much you're willing to like really dig into yourself and be that vulnerable to let it take over, let that habit, let the pain take over, so that way you can be like beautiful again, type stuff. I think you're on mute.
I actually want to bring Dr. Ashley back on here as we, go to this last question we want to ask you. Hey, Dr. Ash, thanks for coming back. So the last question I want to ask you, Victor, is what would you say to others who've lost a loved one to suicide? Who are grieving, who are trying to find their way to cope. What would you say to them?
It's not your fault. No, it's not fair. And asking yourself why, and even if you just got to realize that even if you found out the reason why, it still wouldn't change anything. So you just got to realize that it's hard. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy. But when you get out and you can actually remember them as something more beautiful and not just a sad day when their birthday comes, and it's not a day that you're sad, it's a day that you're like, wow, I miss them, and it's not such a sad experience anymore. It'll be there, but you just got to give it time, and that's all it is. Just know that it's not your fault and you're cared about too.
Thank you for that. Dr. Ashley, is there anything you would add to that? What would you say to someone who's lost a loved one?
So I actually have a personal experience with this as well. When I was a new nurse, I had a roommate, and he was struggling, and I didn't know it. And he was struggling to pay rent and a whole bunch of other things. And finally, I said, you've got to find another place to live. I went to the emergency room for my night shift, came back in the morning, and I found him hanging in the closet. So I know what it's like to walk in on someone who has done this, someone that was a friend, and finding them that way. And, for me, the guilt was very strong because as a clinician, I thought I should have known, I should have seen, I should have recognized, I should have done something. And I talked to somebody about it, and they said, you know what, you need to quit shitting on yourself. You shoulda. It's not how this works.
Right.
Decision that he couldn't deal with life as it was. And that's not something that you would have been able to change. So I think for many people, we have to recognize that these are intensely personal decisions that people make about ending their life. And it oftentimes has very little to do with judgment around how they are related to someone else. It doesn't mean they love you less. It doesn't mean they love their friends less. It just means the pain of life was more than they could take.
Thank you for that. And I know we have just a couple more minutes left, but so Victor, the talented Victor, the musical Victor, the poetic Victor, you want to share a little something with us? Share a little something with us.
Like anything, or is it
anything? You could sing, you could anything. We want a taste of Victor.
This is the first song that I ever released. I'll play y'all a little snippet. Is that audio right?
Yeah.
That's good. Sunset kind of love makes me feel alright. Peaceful like a dove, pretty all the time. I don't wanna know any other feeling. Girl, you give me hope that I could feel the real thing. Sunset kind of love. So, you know.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I was waiting for you to freestyle for us too, but you know, it's all good. No, it's all good. It's all good. We won't put you on the spot. I'm just saying. Victor, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing your truth. Thank you for getting vulnerable with us and just putting it out there. And I know that there are people whose lives are not going to be the same because of you. Be it today, be it tomorrow, be it next week, and it's already happening. And I'm just letting you know you have a special, special place that you have created with each and every one of us. And thank you.
Thank you.
Before you go, is that a real background that you got there?
No, this
is what's happening there?
no, this is just my dad was in here and he went to USC.
Okay.
Yeah, he asked me before. He was like, "You know, there's a USC backdrop, right?" I was like, "Yeah, I know." And he was like, "What if they start thinking you go to USC?" I was like, "Well, they'll see in like 2 weeks that I'm not going to USC, like or this summer, like they'll see." It's not really so.
I was thinking, I'm like, this isn't a national signing thing happening right here. But hey, where are you going to school? Where are you going?
I'm still thinking. I'm looking at LSU right now. I have Penn State, and so I still have to wait for a couple on April 1st is when I find the rest of them. So I'll make that decision real soon.
Good.
We're rooting for you.
You have forever fans. We are rooting for you, and let us know where you go.
I got y'all. Thank you.
You don't know who we might know there. I'm just saying.
I make a good backup dancer, like way back. way back.
All the way back.
Back in the day, I could dance, but that was about 10 years ago when I was in college. Thank you. Thank you, Victor.
Of course.
Wow. Yeah. That is, I can't believe at that age, I mean, it's hearing him say the normalization that's happening with the conversation of suicide, these suicide pacts that these kids are taking. This is a pandemic, and it's a preventable one. And it's one of these things where preventable in the sense that someone who is having these thoughts, it didn't just hit them that day. There's a trail of evidence that has been left that we have not been trained to look for, or we see it, but it's so uncomfortable to call it, name it, claim it. And I'll put myself in that I know there's some friends and family that I have that I worry about. And as we were preparing for this show, they're not comfortable conversations, but they're necessary. It's that to me, I love having the benefit of hindsight, but not in this scenario. This is not a benefit of hindsight scenario, and being able to figure out what those signs are. And I know we'll get into that later on in the show on identifying the signs and then what to do, what to say. And I just have to say this before we bring up our next guest, that there is someone right now that we all know. I'm not saying that we all individually on this couch in our audience know that is thinking about taking their life. And a call could go a long way. Pick up the phone and just ask, how are you doing? Is everything okay with you? And keep picking up the phone. And we'll get into more about how to have that conversation. But I think that if we at least, we always end the show, but I want to keep bringing it up throughout because it's that important. As we are, don't tune in for the rest of the show, but make sure that as we're done, as we wrap up here, that we all make that call to that one person that we're worried about. So.
Yeah, I would just add to that. Make that phone call to that one person you're worried about. Make it to the people you don't actually think you should be worried about, because a lot of times the strong friend is the one you need to check on most, the one that holds everybody else up, the one that is appearing to be normal and supportive and everyone else's crutch. Sometimes they're the ones that you should call, reach out to, be worried about. I would also say that if you are the person and it's not someone that you're worried about, but you're worried about yourself, there is a national suicide prevention lifeline that you should definitely reach out to. It is 1-800-273-8255. Mm-hmm. Make sure that you utilize the resources that are available to you. It is an anonymous conversation. You do not have to even give them your name, and they will never tell anyone that you called, but you can call and have a very real, open and honest conversation about what it is that you're experiencing if you are having suicide ideation.
Can you guys still hear me okay? Okay, I think we lost connection with our next. Okay, we got her? Okay, awesome. Cool.
So now I want to welcome to the couch. I always say the stage, but it's to the couch. I want to welcome a very special individual who is going to share her experiences with us. You will want to stick around for this, because what this person has endured, survived, lived through, and found a way to thrive in the midst of all of it is going to blow your mind. So, welcome to the couch, Finesse.
Hi, everybody. How are you?
We are fantastic. How are you, Miss Finesse?
I'm so nervous. My hands sweating.
We got you. We got you. We got you. Don't be nervous. It's just us and about 7 million people, but that's okay.
It is a lot. It is a lot to have your nerves going when you're sharing your story, but your story is part of your journey. It's part of who you are. And so this is a completely safe space. We've actually kept Dr. Ashley around just in case we need to bring him in. We'll bring in the big dogs if we need to, but I don't think you're going to need any of that. I think you're going to be just fine.
Well, I hope so. I want to first off tell you all, thank you all for the opportunity and inviting me and my organization to your platform. I really appreciate that.
So, Finesse, tell us, you mentioned your organization. Tell us about the mission of your organization and exactly why we are having this conversation right now.
It's so much going on, right? Just in the COVID. So pre-COVID, the numbers of suicide for youth were extremely high, but during COVID, it has gone like through the roof, especially for the youth, because a lot of people were not used to social isolation and they're not used to being at home. Like some kids were in situations that a home is not a home. And we say that all the time. A couch is not a home. A floor is not a home. Like if there's no safe place to call home, then you're kind of stuck in a situation where you banked on those 8 hours being at school, even if it wasn't the best school. Now you're stuck wherever you are quarantining, right? And so the good thing is some schools are opening back up, but a lot of schools are still not. And when all of this happened, it caused stress on parents and the students. So it made it where it was like, okay, so not only do I have to take care of me, and this is from the parent perspective, and I have to try to figure out how to do remote working, and then now you're home too, so we're both home together. I have to figure out how to homeschool you, and if I, it's a lot of things that make it a little complicated, right? So that's what we've been trying to focus on, like how can we make things easier? Because when we started this originally, this was pre-COVID, and then when COVID hit, that kind of shift everything a little bit more, because it's like, okay, so we're in a crisis in the middle of a pandemic. And I say crisis because youth suicide is a crisis. It's a live crisis. And then you got the pandemic on top of that. So it's just overwhelming for all of our youth. And we focus on youth suicide prevention, and youth meaning Gen Zs as well as millennials. And we're really just trying to help save lives. Me, I'm a suicide survivor. My story, I try not to get emotional because I'm still kind of living through my truth, and I still deal with things. And I tell people that all the time. As a suicide survivor, those suicidal thoughts don't just vanish. To some people they may, but that's not necessarily my reality. So I can just speak from my perspective. So when I dealt with suicide, I mean, I think that I'm 29 years old. I've been dealing with suicide for probably about 20 years now. And I know for some people, it's just like, how in the world were you in elementary school dealing with suicide? And I seen my little sister get killed she was 3, I was 6. It was a whole shebang. And it just led to so many other things after that. And it didn't start off with suicide. It started off with trying to get away. And that's what I was trying to explain to different people. Like, it doesn't just start off with suicide, because it's like, oh, you had a suicidal thought. And it's like, it's not just the suicidal thought. It starts off with, I just want to be where my sister is. That's all I wanted. I can't speak for other people. Again, this is my testimony. I just wanted to be where my sister was. It was my first BFF. So it was just like, how can I get to where she is? Like, I don't know how to, like, we used to dress alike, even though there was a 2-year age gap. I mean, we were like twins, kind of, the way that we were. We, slept in the same bed, all that good stuff. So all of that just was stripped from me at 6. And so I became at home with my mom, the only child, but I still had other siblings on my father's side. And it just made it where it was hard for me to feel like I still had other siblings. Like, for a long time, I felt like the only sibling I had is who passed. And I don't know, it was hard. And a lot of people say, lean on the other siblings and, y'all can grow together. But it wasn't that easy because we didn't live in the same home. So my life kind of changed. And so with We Are Finesse, it's basically from the standpoint of walking in those shoes. And I just remember being in these situations, and my mom took me to therapy. I did camps. I mean, you name it, she tried it. We were there. Nothing worked because no one really could relate to my situation. I even ended up in a mental institution as a kid and then as an adult for suicide. And it was the worst experience I've ever had in my life, because a lot of people think that certain things are resources, and they don't understand that is depending on that person in that situation. Like, you can't put everybody in a box and solve everybody's problem the same way. You have to figure out what that person really, really need. And for me, I never wanted to hurt anybody else. That's the last thing that's on my mind. So when I was placed in an environment with other people that wasn't there for the same reason I was in the mental hospital, it was just like, where am I and what is going on? How, Lord, if you get me out of this one, I promise you, I don't know. It was that type of conversation. I don't know what's going on. I don't know where I am. I just know I was just trying to get with my sister, and I'm far from it. It's like you made a left when you should have made a right. And it was awful. And so, like, just going through those things, people say things happen for a reason. And I'm on the verge. I believe it, but then I still be like, like, God, you could have spared me a little bit, like, so I get that things happen for a reason, but 9 out of 10 times we don't want to go through most of the things that we have to endure. And now, doing We Are Finesse, I quit every day, y'all. Like, it's hard. It's hard because not only am I fighting for my life, I'm helping others fight for theirs. And it's so hard because it's like you want people to understand and you want people to realize that we are in this together. But in the same breath, you're just like, everybody's situation is so unique that when I say that I'm dealing with suicidal thoughts, my suicidal thoughts are not the next person's suicidal thoughts. And what TV and media and all this other stuff that's out here, what that shows, that's not real life. I walk around with a Kool-Aid smile. Nobody would have ever expected it. I'm always happy. I'm always willing to help people. Well, on the outside, right? Like the little commercial that has the little face, the happy face, like that's always been me. So people never thought like even an inkling that I was suicidal. Like, it was just like when they found out, I remember the year that people really, really found out was when I was at Savannah State University, and they ended up having to cause a whole scene in my dorm room. And it was embarrassing, first off, how it was handled, but it also brought light to the situation that a lot of people were like, dang, I've had those thoughts too, but I'll never say it out loud if this is how they're going to treat it. If the moment I mention something, it's a whole embarrassing scene on campus, who's saying something? Like, I'm not, like, it just didn't work. It wasn't handled the right way. And that's not everybody's situation. This is just my testimony. This is what I've experienced. And with We Are Finesse, we're just trying to build that mentorship. We're going to have it. We're building an app right now that'll be pre-installed on devices and things like that. So we want to make it where you are partnered with someone that has walked in your shoes, because calling hotlines are great. Texting hotlines are great. They're great resources, but they're not for everybody. They were not for me because the person on the receiving end had no inkling about what I had gone through. So it sounds like my situation was like, ooh, you went through all of that. And it's like, well, I mean, dang, I knew I was going through a lot, but you just made me feel like I was real bad. You know what I mean? Versus it was relatable. Like, oh, you too? Like, that just makes it. Right now we're doing virtual groups where people come in every week, and you're just being able to mental health check in. Like, you talk about how you're doing, what you have going on. And there's just other people around that's able to say, I'm going through that too, not just you. And it makes it a little bit easier because you don't feel like you're going crazy. Like, when you're the only one dealing with something and people around you don't understand, you feel like you're going insane, and it sucks. It's a really sucky feeling. So
Finesse, I got a question for you, because I got to unpack a couple of things that you said, just so that we can, because I feel like there are people who can relate to your story. Okay. There are people who are, if they are not experiencing it right now, they have possibly experienced it in the past. And so, given that we know that mental health is a journey, it is not something that you recover from, get past, and it's never a thought again, or, not something that you deal with every day. And so I love that you were talking about how this is something you still battle. This is your life for you, right? And so with that as sort of the nucleus of our thinking, how do you every day find the strength and the courage to fight back all of those thoughts, the things that say that there is no hope, there is no way out other than suicide? Give me one or two or three things that you every single day have to do to find the strength to keep going?
First off, my conversation with God is on a whole different level. That's my homeboy. Like, I'm like, listen, if you don't get me through it, then this is it. Like, there's no other way for me to get through what I have to get through without God. And I hate to sound all religious and stuff like that. And I know that a lot of people, to some, I know in our organization, some may say the universe, whoever your creator is. I'm talking about mine at this moment, and mine is the one that get me through mainly because growing up, I heard a lot, pray about it. And it's just like, bro, there got to be more than God than just pray about it, because ain't no way, that this is not working. My conversations are hitting the ceiling. He not hearing me. I think he's asleep. There was so much going on in my mind, like nothing was changing. I'm like, I'm talking to God, but am I talking to the right God? Hold on, like, is there a different channel? I didn't know. I didn't understand it. And so I thought I had to pray a certain way because I grew up born and raised in the church. So like if my prayer wasn't calling heavens down, I thought that it wasn't a prayer. And I had to realize, like, you talk to God how I'm talking to y'all is how I talk to God. And it's just like, all right, God, I don't know how I woke up, but apparently you had a reason for it. Whether I agree with it right now in this moment or not, what was the reason? What am I supposed to do today? And if you really want me to do this, I can't do this alone, right? Like, this is my conversation with me and God, like trying to figure out how we're going to get through today. Outside of that, I see a therapist every week. If it was up to me, I probably would see my therapist every day because unfortunately, I was in therapy since the age of 6. So 23 years, but it was never effective. So right now, it's like I'm playing catch up for 23 years of my life. And it's just like, I tell her all the time, like, this 45 minutes, this is not long enough. I got a whole 29, I got to scroll, and we can only get through a sentence, each session. And so it makes it where it works. It's better than nothing, y'all. But finding a therapist is not easy. And that's another thing that we'll be able to offer on our app. We'll be able to get to know you a little bit more, so that when we connect you to a therapist, it's somebody that is for you and not just generic, if that makes sense. Like, it's not just you throwing yourself out there and like, hey, I'm trying a therapist for the first time. Finding a therapist should be just as easy as hitting Instacart, grocery, Uber Eats, Lyft, or whatever. It should be just as easy. So we're definitely trying to do that. But God and the therapist, and I mean my family, and just to know that there's people counting on me adds stress. I'll be honest, because I just be like, okay, you can't think like that today, because if you think like this, the people that's looking up to you and the people that's following you, are they going to be hopeless because you're hopeless? You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, wait, how does this work, God? Like, you won't put more on me than I can bear, but this is a little heavy. Like, what's going on? So like, this is my conversations that I have to have out loud, which sometimes people won't get it. That's around you, and ain't none of their business.
Yeah.
Well, someone talking to yourself, because God lives in you, or whoever you're talking to, you're having that conversation to get it through. So those are some of the things that I do to try to get through every day, and every day is a struggle. I'll be honest.
So Vanessa, I'm gonna pull an audible here, and it'll make sense here in a minute. So this, as we set up at the beginning, this is day 1 of a 2-day conversation. So we'll be back tomorrow at 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific. And why I said audible, we have 3 young black men in their 50s that played, all of them played competitive sports at the highest level. And when you think about, the stigma, we'll spend a whole hour on talking about stigma, because, you have, black men typically are supposed to be, as Ashley said, get over it, toughen up, that sort of thing. Not just black men, but when you think about athletes, that sort of thing. I think it'd be amazing to have you back, because your testimony that you shared in terms of your fight every single day, I think it's something we need to bring onto that conversation tomorrow, and really dive a little bit more into. We need a whole show just with you, but I think because that's real, and I felt that from my heart down to my toe when you were talking, that this is a struggle every single day. And it really emphasizes the point we were saying, how mental health, just like any other illness, You know, you're going to have good days with your cancer. You're going to have good days with your arthritis. You're going to have good days with your allergies. You're going to have good days with, you know, your heart disease or whatever's ailing you. And I think if anyone's going to take anything from today in terms of our survivor and the outcry is knowing that this isn't okay, I talked to them and it's done. Let's move on. Every day struggle like any other illness, and we need to make sure, I think, we explore that a little bit more. So EJ, I think I'll turn over to you to.
Yep. So I would just say, you know, as we're winding down today, Vanessa, you see I'm looking at you sideways right now, right? Talking about I'm nervous, talking about I'm not sure, talking about this is my side eye. In case you're missing it, that's what I'm giving you right now. Words cannot explain who you are and who you are standing up right now. And I am telling you, there are people who are looking at you saying, if I could only be a 10th of what Vanessa is right now, I might be okay. I might be okay. So I need you to hear that. I need you to receive it because you're about to be a part of our life. Just know that. So I do have a question for you. He says you kind of wind things down. What would, you know, we always talk about, we do want to end every conversation with a do something. What are you going to do? What are we asking people to do? Right? You can't just sit and this is a great conversation. It was uncomfortable. People shared some stuff. I cried and I go home. No. So my ask of you is, what would you say to someone who feels death is their only or their best option right now? What would you say to them?
Man, I would say I get it, first off, because it's so easy to feel like death is the best option. Because look at the world we live in. The world we live in is evil. It's so much happening that it doesn't seem like it's worth it every day. And when you realize that people are still fighting for basic human rights, that just alone just makes it so hard for me. And so for those of you that are like me, that feel like some days death is better than the world we live in, death is better than life, I'll say that it does get a little bit easier, but then it gets harder again, because I say that in a way where when you get over one thing, you got another mountain to climb. So it's like when people be like, oh, better days are coming, they don't really give you, they don't say it right. It's coming, but in a different way. Like, you know, one struggle is going to, you know, you may get over that hurdle, but it's another hurdle. Like there's always dips in the roads. There's always potholes. And so just know that you're not in this alone. And that's why we have the I matter, you matter, we matter, because it's something that you really have to understand, that you're not in this alone. And yeah, I agree with Victor. People love to say, I'm here for you. That is bogus. Because then when you notice that real quick that people are not that they're not there for you like you need them to be. Because when you're trying to have those type of conversations, it's like, it's a Debbie Downer, right? And a lot of people are like, oh, that's too deep for me. That's too dark for me. So you realize you can't talk to everybody about it. But if you find that right person, and if any of us is that right person, send us a message. Like before you take that step to say, this is it, just give somebody a chance to relate to you. And it may not be who you expecting it to be. It may be a complete stranger, but just give us a chance.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that. Robin said it earlier. Kennedy said it earlier. If you need help, if you are feeling any kind of way, there are places right now where you can call. The number is running across the bottom of the screen. Please make that call or reach out to somebody who you know and let them know, you know what, I'm not okay. I am not okay. And if you are the recipient of that call that says, I'm not okay, we are asking you to listen and really take on and love on that person who has just really reached out to you and said, I'm not okay. and I can't do this by myself. Thank you. Love on them, hug on them. And there are resources. There are mental health resources, mental health first aid. We are going to leave links, connections on our sites here, etc., of how you can get in touch with Finesse and her organization, how you can get in touch with mental health first aid and get trained in that arena. This National Suicide Prevention Hotline, they're on both sides. There is something you can do. And if you know someone or think you know someone who just might need that extra little bit of, you have a call them now. Call them now. Tell them I'm here. And what can I do? How are you? How are you? How are you? So I want to thank you. I want to thank all of our guests who are here today, Dr. Ashley, Victor, and Victor, we're going to send links and we'll have links up on our site of how you can get connected and purchase Victor's book. Please support him. He is doing fabulous things as well, again, to Vanessa's organization and Dr. Ashley, connecting to him for all of his continued wisdom and knowledge. And so with that, Robin, let's talk about tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll be brief. So as I mentioned, tomorrow we have night 2, and we'll be joined by Charles C.J. Johnson. I know he's out there. He's been commenting on the show. We'll also be joined by Darian Hagan and Stevie Baggs Jr. Check out their bios on all of our social media sites. We're going to spend an entire show rather, talking about the stigma associated with suicide. And so my final word is make the call. Make the call to the person that is on your mind right now, and it's better to be wrong than to be right. So make the call, and then tune in tomorrow, 8 o'clock Eastern, for part 2 of Semicolon. Roll that beautiful beam footage.